Hey there, comic book fans. This is a video for Tim Marrant's contest. And he said what he wanted us to do was go over to our pull list and pick out a comic and read it and geek out over it. But I do that every week when I show off my pull list. So instead, I'm going to geek out on one of my single issue Hall of Fame comics that I just pulled off my shelf and reread. And something a little mainstream for me. It's Marvel Team Up number 68, Spider-Man and the Man-Thing. But in order to explain why this is one of my Hall of Fame comics, we're going to have to go on a little Spider-Man memory lane trip. The first issue of Spider-Man I remember reading is this one. Amazing Spider-Man 157. Still love this John Romita cover. And the first one I remember buying was 166. So 9 months later. I remember, for some reason, when was this? March 1976. Which means it probably came out in December 1975. I can remember shoveling snow in my driveway as I was 9 with my neighbors. Shoveled the snow, finished up, went over to 7-Eleven and bought an issue of Spider-Man. Fun issue 2 because he was, Spider-Man fighting the Lizard and Stegron. Stegron, what a weird name that was. And Stegron made dinosaurs come alive right in the middle of Manhattan. But fun issue. But like I said, I was 9 when these came out, and who did Len Wein, Ross Andru, Mike Esposito did these. And they're solidly middle-of-the-road comics. They're decent. I enjoyed them when if you're 9, you're going to like these comics. But there's really nothing special about them. And there's not a lot. To me, Spider-Man was just another superhero that I picked up. There was nothing particularly that stood out about him, nothing special. There was no difference between Spider-Man and anyone else. But I can always remember reading about, and wherever I was reading about comics, about it, Spider-Man was a special hero. Everybody loved Spider-Man. And I thought he was okay. And the other Spider-Mans I had were, I don't have any left, Marvel Tales. I still have this, which is one of the Fireside Book reprints of the John Romita Spider-Man. This is all John Romita Spider-Man stuff. And some Gil Kane. And I always found this, as a 10-year-old in the late 70s, very old-fashioned. I liked it, but John Romita Spider-Man, was very, how square is that, Peter Parker? Huh? That's not even nerdy. That's square. Once again, I still liked it. I liked Marvel Tales, the John Romita Spider-Man reprints, and I liked the Amazing Spider-Man, Ross Andru, Len Wein. It was solid stuff. I was 10, 12. But a few years later, they put out these. When did this come out? 1978 or something. Pocketbooks. 1, 2, and number 3. You can see they're pretty well worn. These are the Steve Ditko Spider-Man. They're 7 issues in a 1 through 6, 7 through 13, and 14 through 20, complete and unabridged. And you can see there are these tiny little. It was funny because when I was a kid, I had no problem reading these. Now I look at them and go, I can't even see them barely. And they're just this was before the days of collected editions. This was before the days of trade paperbacks. And this was the first and only way I could read the Steve Ditko Spider-Mans. And I have to tell you, these made me realize that Spider-Man was special. These are really, really good. I don't know how many of you read the Steve Ditko Spider-Man, but they're spectacular. And what sets Spider-Man apart from all other heroes you can find in these issues. Because though it's common now, it wasn't common then. It wasn't even common in the late 70s when I started reading comics, is the whole hero's journey thing. You know, that Joseph Campbell hero's journey, where the hero starts out not knowing anything, goes through some trials and tribulations, and ends up being a hero, basically. There's like 6 steps. I don't know. There's a whole hero's journey thing where you start out knowing nothing and you end up being a hero. And that's everywhere now. Every superhero starts out not knowing anything and learning their powers and becoming that's cliche now, but in the early Spider-Mans it wasn't. And if you ever notice, that's why storytellers in movies they always want to go back to the early young high school Spider-Man, because that's the interesting Spider-Man. That's the Spider-Man who wasn't like every other hero. That's the Spider-Man who didn't know what he was doing, was an everyday guy. Most superheroes are, Clark Kent, Bruce Wayne, Tony Stark, Don Blake. They're grown-ups. They're fully formed adults. They're billionaires. They're winners. Spider-Man was, Peter Parker was not a winner. He started out as 15. And it's interesting now when reading these John Romita era Spider-Man, what they did with this Spider-Man, what they did, like Steve Ditko left, the hero's journey was over. So what they then did was they kind of made the Spider-Man the lovable loser. That's what set him apart from other heroes, was that he was kind of he didn't win all the time. He wasn't a billionaire playboy. He was, a guy trying to make it by and being a superhero in his spare time. He was the lovable loser Spider-Man. So that kind of defines the John Romita era for me. And then, like I said, the era when I started reading Spider-Man, he was just kind of another superhero, which is fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being just another superhero, but it doesn't make you special. And the last Spider-Man thing I read was back a few years ago when I was getting mostly collected editions, was the Spider Island story. Dan Slott, Umberto Ramos, some other people in this. And once again, there was nothing wrong with this. It was a fine story, but Spider-Man is just another hero these days, which I think is I hear people complain about them. I haven't read Spider-Man since this, so I don't really know what's going on. But I've heard people complain that, they're making Spider-Man into Tony Stark these days. And I can understand why Spider-Man fans might not like that, because, like I said, the ultimate Spider-Man story is the Steve Ditko hero's journey stuff. And after that, it's the lovable loser stuff. It's the, Spider-Man as everyday guy who can't catch a break. So, all of a sudden you make him like Tony Stark, and he really is, like every other hero. But anyway, back to my single issue. Oh, telephone is ringing. Now, where was I before I was interrupted by the phone? I think I was getting back to the actual issue of Marvel Team Up 68. And this is by Chris Claremont, John Byrne, and Bob Wyacek. Spider-Man and Man-Thing. And this issue is kind of a microcosm of the hero's journey. That's what we have in this issue. We have the basic story is Spider-Man. Oh no, the Man-Thing is lunging at him. But not really, he's in a tank. He's in a tank. So basically the story is Spider-Man finds Man-Thing in a circus, breaks him out of the circus, and is bringing him back to the swamp to die, he thinks. But the Man-Thing is revived by the swamp and going about his business to fight this guy. I think he showed up with Despair, who I think was brand new at this time. I'd never heard of Despair before. Yeah, this one came out in 1978, by the way. So I was around 12 this time. But I just reread it 20 minutes ago. And despair is this, and it turns into a horror book from here on in, because it's the hero's journey in that Spider-Man is faced with a villain he knows nothing about, and despair's main power is he touches you and you fall into despair. You just, everything bad ever goes into your head. And the twist on it too is he's Man-Thing. What does it go? Whatever knows fear burns at the Man-Thing's touch. Well, despair makes the Man-Thing feel fear. So the Man-Thing just, every time despair touches the Man-Thing just bursts into flames. He's just on fire because and then, you know, you can see him here going back into the swamp to try and put himself out, but it's not real fire, it's mystical fire. So the Man-Thing just keeps burning every time despair touches him. And he's got these two magicians held hostage, and Spider-Man's just like, yeah, I'll save you. And gets touched by despair and is like, oh, excuse me, coughity cough. And Spider-Man just collapses and breaks. And he's like, crap, I didn't know I could break that easy. So in just a few pages, we get the hero's journey from Spider-Man, in that he's faced with the unknown, tries to do something about it, can't do anything about it. He's just beaten by despair, and he's saved twice by the Man-Thing. And the Man-Thing just, every time he saves Spider-Man, because Spider-Man tries to go into despair again and can't, because he just makes him cry. And every time, like I said, so finally he's saved one last time by the Man-Thing. Oh, once again, just the Man-Thing doesn't really do anything in this except try and save Spider-Man and gets set on fire, burns over and over and over. So this is a real. So finally, in the hero's journey, he stripped everything from Spider-Man but his heroism. And Spider-Man tries to save the Man-Thing and just goes berserk on despair and crushes him, because there's nothing left of Spider-Man but his heroism, until finally the two wizards are like, all right, don't kill him, we got him, and they take him away. Well, this was always one of my favorite issues of Spider-Man. Very emotional issue, because, like I said, they even reference when Gwen Stacy died in this, which I don't know if I'd ever read the issue where Gwen Stacy died at this time, but I knew they had mentioned her in Spider-Man before. So there I am geeking out not only about Spider-Man, but about my single issue Hall of Fame Spider-Man, where he fights despair and has to go on the hero's journey in just a few pages. Like I said, you can do a good story in just one issue. It's amazing. So there you go. That's my entry into Tim Marrant's contest, and I'll catch you guys all later.